This coming Sunday is the 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time. We are recording this on the 20th, the Feast of St. Bernard, and that's the statue of St. Bernard behind me. So we do celebrate our patron saint during the course of this week. We have been listening to the Bread of Life discourse these Sundays, last few, chapter 6 of John's Gospel. And now, as we hear today's Gospel, we're hearing some of the feedback that the disciples are giving to Jesus. They have been listening to him. We're hearing their thoughts, their comments about this teaching. The passage is from John's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 60 to 69. Let's take a listen. Many of Jesus' disciples who were listening said, "This saying is hard. Who can accept it?" Since Jesus knew that his disciples were murmuring about this, he said to them, "Does this shock you? What if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life, while the flesh is of no avail. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life, but there are some of you who do not believe." Jesus knew from the beginning the ones who would not believe and the one who would betray him. And he said, "For this reason I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted him by my Father." As a result of this, many of his disciples returned to their former way of life and no longer accompanied him. Jesus then said to the 12, "Do you also want to leave?" Simon Peter answered him, "Master, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and are convinced that you are the Holy One of God." Their first reaction to Jesus' words was simply this: "This saying is hard. Who can accept it?" Jesus' words have been a challenge for them. Jesus has been speaking to them about a spiritual life. He speaks of himself as the bread of life. Were the disciples still listening to him with a kind of literal understanding? Jesus, who had multiplied the loaves and fishes and given them something to eat, Jesus is now telling them that he will nourish their spiritual hungers. Could it be that some of his followers just wanted the material things, food? Maybe they thought, if he can give them food, if he can multiply loaves and fishes, might he also be able to give them other kinds of material things, clothes or homes, animals? What we do know is what we hear in the gospel passage. As a result of this, many of his disciples returned to their former way of life and no longer accompanied him. This was a turning point, a breaking point for some of those who had been following Jesus. His words had challenged them, and it became clear to them that Jesus was addressing a different kind of hunger. Maybe they weren't even aware of that hunger, or maybe they didn't think that it had to be filled, and so they walked away. In some ways, this passage can give us comfort in our own day. We can be disappointed that those we know who at one time were very involved in the life of the parish have left, drifted away, or turned away. It happened in Jesus' own time, with Jesus himself present. With Jesus standing right in front of them, they walked away. The reality is that since this episode that we hear in the gospel, there are those who remain disciples and some who choose to leave, to move on. Jesus asks the 12, "Do you also want to leave?" Peter then has a most beautiful response: "Master, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and are convinced that you are the Holy One of God. To whom shall we go?" What a great response. There is really no place else to go to receive what Jesus can give, what he can provide, a path to eternal life. I can put my trust in politics or in business or in education or in medicine and all kinds of institutions, and they do good and worthwhile and necessary things for us, but none of them can give us what Jesus alone can give us. To whom shall we go? A question worth our reflection today and anytime I feel like stepping away, drifting away, turning away from the Lord. To whom shall we go? Let the gospel fill your week. See you in church. For now, God bless.